Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Weekend Bible Study. All is well here in White House as we dodge the worst of a couple of snow flurries. Now, don't laugh, you people up north. We did get about 4 inches of snow once, and it was beautiful. I still hope to put some pictures of it up on my website. So we seem to have lost more work hours to jury duty than to the snow, but we're carrying on. For your interest, we have been steadily moving material into MP3 format and putting it on CDs for convenience and also to save your money. 13 of our major albums are now each available on one CD. These range from the very long Christian Origin series, which goes all the way through Acts and the Epistles. I think that was 96 radio programs. There are 2 albums available in this form that were never done on the radio. They were readings just done in the studio of Isaiah and the Psalms with commentary. So all that's now on MP3 format. You can get a CD for much less than having to buy a whole album of the stuff. In addition, several of our weekend Bible study lessons are now available on MP3. They're all available free of charge on the internet. But if you want to have an MP3 that you can play, more at your convenience, because a lot of people, it isn't always convenient to use the downline, the online playing of it, maybe because they have a slow internet connection. So anyhow, give us a call, find out what we've got in the MP3 stuff, and load up. We're hoping to see some of you in Branson over Memorial Day. This may be the last year for the Memorial Day Family Retreat. Now, before you moan or about that, we are thinking about moving it to Pentecost permanently. In other words, every Pentecost we'd be somewhere doing a family retreat. If you have an opinion or a preference, we'd love to hear from you. We have no questions this week, which gives us more time for Deuteronomy, so organize your notes in your Bible, grab a cup of coffee and a bran muffin, and open up to Deuteronomy chapter 9. Hear, O Israel, you are now about to cross the Jordan and go in and possess nations greater and stronger than you, with large cities that have walls up to the sky. The people are strong and tall, Anakites. You know about them. You've heard it said, who can stand up against the Anakites? Well, yes, they had heard about these people from the spies that went into the land 40 years ago. And they heard about it from their elders and their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers as they wandered around in the wilderness. Now, you got to realize, as you're reading your way through this, you've got to hear Moses talking to the Israelites, probably to the collection of the elders in particular, who would then have the responsibility of conveying this to the others. But he said, be assured today that the Lord your God is one who goes across ahead of you like a devouring fire. He will destroy them. He will subdue them before them. And you will drive them out and annihilate them quickly, as the Lord has promised you. Now, there's a big lesson here, and it's a big mistake for people to just dismiss this stuff as old history. You know, my landlord once upon a time out in Abilene told me, he was Church of Christ. He said, the Old Testament's like a road map you use to get from Texas to California. You get to California, you don't need the road map anymore. You don't throw it away, but you don't need it. Well, that's a big mistake when it comes to sitting down to reading any portion of the Bible. I will refer you to Jesus, who, when he was being tempted by Satan, said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord shall man live. So there's a lesson to be learned for any generation and any people, anywhere, anytime, from people like Moses, who spoke to a people in a time, a crucial time, a pivotal time in their history. Here's the lesson that is here. It lies very close to the foundation of most of the problems that you and I face. You can't stay in bed in the morning and expect God to find you a job. You have to do your diligence and get out there and pound the pavement. And you can't give up on any challenge. It is your job to fight through. Do not, however, assume that you can go out and annihilate anyone without explicit instructions from God and whatever governmental structure there is at the time. This is not vigilantism. This is governmental. It is organized by the government God had put in place. Now, here comes the next lesson rolling down the hill toward us. After the Lord your God has driven them out before you, do not say to yourself, well, the Lord has brought me here to take possession of this land because of my righteousness. No. It is on account of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord is going to drive them out before you. You may have to sit down and think your way through this as to just how wicked a people have to be before they should be annihilated. But it does come to that. It came to that in Sodom and Gomorrah, and it came to that for the Amorites. Well, it's not because, now in case you didn't get it, here it comes back again in verse 5. It is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you're going in to take possession of their land, but on account of the wickedness of these nations. The Lord your God will drive them out before you to accomplish what he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he's told them twice. Well, maybe one more time. Verse 6, understand then, I want to be sure you get this. It's not because of your righteousness that the Lord your God is giving you this good land to possess, because you are a stiff-necked people. I can almost see them, cringing, maybe backing up a little bit. They're elders now. They were teenagers when they started up here. And here you got Moses, a man who has dominated their lives for 40 years, and he's telling them, you are a stiff-necked people. Remember this and never forget how you provoked the Lord your God to anger in the desert. From the day you left Egypt until you arrived here, you have been rebellious against the Lord. Now, there is a case then, isn't there, for remembering your mistakes, your sins, and your failures. That's what you get for not believing, not trusting, and not fighting through. At Horeb, you aroused the Lord's wrath, so he was angry enough to destroy you. When I went up on the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant that the Lord had made with you, I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I ate no bread, I drank no water. The Lord gave me 2 stone tablets inscribed by the finger of God. On them were all the commandments the Lord proclaimed to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the assembly. So not only did God take his finger and write these words in stone, and this is one of the more impressive moments in the movie The Ten Commandments, as Moses is cowering over in the corner while God writes these words on stone. At the end of the 40 days and 40 nights, God gave me the 2 stone tablets, the tables of the covenant, and the Lord said, get down from here quick, because your people, like this, they're your people now, Moses, whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have turned away quickly from what I commanded them, and they have made a cast idol for themselves. And not just any old idol, by the way. This was a golden calf. And what has been learned historically about calf worship, it involves sex, sometimes child prostitution, and there's the implication in the scriptures they were all dancing around naked when Moses came back down the mountain. And the Lord said to me, I have seen these people. They're a stiff-necked people. Let me alone so that I can destroy them and blot their name out from under heaven. I'll start all over again, and with a nation stronger and more numerous than they. I'll make you into that nation. Don't even think about it. Your ego will trip you up eventually. Moses was wise enough that he didn't accept that invitation. All of us have these moments in our lives when there's an opening that comes our way, and you know before you ever start down that road that it's going to trip you up. Your ego will get involved. You become vain. Anyway, Moses turned and went down from the mountain while it was still burning. He had the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hands. When I looked and saw that you had sinned against the Lord your God, You had made yourselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. You had turned aside quickly from the way the Lord had commanded you. And you know, at this point, Moses realized he held in his arms those 2 tablets of stone, which would have, if implemented, have condemned those people. So I took the 2 tablets, threw them out of my hands, and broke them into pieces before your eyes. Then once again I fell prostrate before the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights. I ate no bread, I drank no water, because of all the sin you had committed, doing what was evil in the Lord's sight, and so provoking him to anger. I feared the anger and wrath of God, because he was angry enough with you to wipe you out. But again, the Lord listened to me. Moses saved their bacon once again. It happened more than once over the time that he was with them. And he continues in verse 20 to say, the Lord was angry enough with Aaron to destroy him. But at that time I prayed for Aaron too. And I took that sinful thing of yours, the calf you had made, I burned it in the fire, I crushed it and ground it to powder as fine as dust, and threw the dust into a stream flowing down the mountain. I can only conclude from what I read through this whole thing that Aaron must have been something of a weak sister. He tended to, bend to the will of the people, and then when he was caught out on it, he made excuses for himself. But God had called him, and he was angry, and God was angry enough to destroy him. But Moses interceded. I don't know what it is, but in recent months I have had a growing realization that one of the callings of God, one of the works of God that are handed to us to do, is intercessory prayer. Prayer's work. It's not just, something you can do dancing around church and having a wonderful ball and good time with your friends. Prayer, real prayer, is hard work. It's an obligation. And once you pick it up, you have to carry it. This man, Moses, was a praying man, and he participated in what God was doing. And when God offered him the opportunity to exercise his ego to become a big honcho, he turned it down, choosing instead to do his job, which was to intercede for the people who were weak. You also made the Lord angry at Taberah, at Massa, at Kibroth Hattava. And when the Lord sent you out from Kadesh Barnea, he said, go take possession of the land I have given you. But you rebelled against the command of the Lord. You wouldn't trust him. You wouldn't obey him. In fact, he said, verse 24, you have been rebellious against the Lord ever since I have known you. There were very few intermissions in this, I'm afraid. And yet, they still made it all the way to the Jordan River and across, and they still were able to take possession of the land, although they didn't do it right, even though they did screw that up, and they're suffering for it to this day. Nevertheless, they did make it, and God did not finally reject them. Now, all this comes from the admonition. Don't think we're doing this because you are such a fine people. And I don't know, I think it's a real temptation that comes the way of all Christians sometimes, that God has blessed us. He's given us all kinds of things. If we have good health, if we have a good job, don't make the mistake of thinking this is because you're such a good person. It's because Christ loves you, and he does the things and gives you the things he gives you in love. But still, you have to endure. You have to fight. You have to struggle. Moses said, I lay prostrate before the Lord those 40 days and 40 nights because the Lord said he would destroy you. I prayed to the Lord and I said, O sovereign Lord, do not destroy your people. Your own inheritance you redeemed by your great power and brought out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Overlook the stubbornness of this people, their wickedness and their sin. Otherwise, the country you brought us out of will say, oh, well, the Lord was not able to take them into the land he promised them, and because he hated them, he brought them out to put them to death in the desert. But they are your people, your inheritance you brought out by your great power and your stretched arm. You know, this is a great example of intercessory prayer and of great leadership, something Aaron could not simply arise to. He was not able. When the people put a little pressure on him, he was right there, made the golden calf for them. And when he was caught at it, he just said, "Oh, well, I don't know what happened. I threw all this gold in the fire, and out came this calf." You know, it's really a sad, sad situation. And I really think there's another little lesson in here I don't want you to overlook. It's okay to reason with God. It's okay to present your argument about why he should do something, why he should not do something. Because Moses, because he did, changed history. Now, I don't want to go into politics, but in government, there are leaders and there are egocentric power grabbers. The signs of leadership and the lack thereof are right there if you're willing to believe your eyes. If you're not so married to one political party or the other, or one way of looking at stuff, you can look and see who it is who is acting like a leader, and who is not. Leadership requires self-sacrifice. Self-indulgence is a clear example of a non-leader. Think that over, and let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with Deuteronomy chapter 10. Chapter 10. At that time the Lord said to me, "Chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and come up to me on the mountain. Also make a wooden chest." This is going to be the ark. "I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tables which you broke. Then you are to put them into the chest." That chest will be called initially the Ark of the Testimony, because the 10 Commandments at first are called the Testimony of God. If he's going to be called in as a witness and stand up and testify, this is his testimony, the 10 words. "So I made the ark out of acacia wood and chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I went up the mountain with the 2 tablets in my hand, and the Lord wrote on those tablets what he wrote before, the 10 Commandments he had proclaimed to you in the mountain out of the fire on the day of your assembly." So God did it twice, and the Lord gave them to me. I came down the mountain, and I put the tables in the ark I had made as the Lord commanded me, and they are there now. That's enough to make the hair rise on the back of your neck. Because somewhere those stone tables still exist. Now, the reason I say that with so much confidence is really pretty simple. When you've read your way through the history of the Old Testament, you will find consistently that every movement of the ark is talked about, described in detail. But there is a point in Israel's history, and you can actually find this relatively easy by using a concordance, when the ark simply disappears from their history and is never mentioned again. If indeed one of their enemies had taken the ark, we would have a record of that. If one of their enemies had destroyed the ark, somebody would have written that down. If somebody had taken the tablets out and crushed them, somebody would have written that down. We would know about it, but no one ever says a word. It's just, they just vanish. What happened? What I suspect happened is that at a point of time when the Babylonians were coming, and there was a danger they would take the city, that the Ark of the Covenant and the tables were hidden. And the men who heard them died without ever telling anyone where they had done it. And somewhere within a reasonable distance of Jerusalem, who knows, maybe right under the Temple Mount, there's a cave, a slot, a covered-over grave looking the place. And in it is the Ark of the Covenant and these 2 tablets, which are there now. I don't believe for a moment the stories I've heard of people. I mean, like Ron Wyatt said that he'd actually laid eyes on it, they'd seen it, and they sealed it back up. I don't believe it. Flat out. The discovery of the Ark of the Covenant is so big, so huge, there is absolutely no way you can seal something like that back up and just hide it again. Too many people would know, and word would be out. And the discovery of the ark with those two tablets would be it would be at this point in time the most profound happening in the history of Palestine. And it would probably trigger, well, what would it trigger? I'll let you think that over as far as the events that would follow on the heels of that in the relationship between Israel and the Palestinians. For one thing, the Palestinians deny there ever was an ark, or there ever was a temple. It never was there. And evidence that it was would create a crisis for them, for the Israelis, and probably a lot of loss of life. Well, the Israelites traveled from the wells of the Jaconites to Moserah. There Aaron died and was buried, and Eleazar his son succeeded him as a priest. From there they traveled to this is a tough one, Gudgodah, and on to Jotbatha, a land with streams of water. At that time the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord to minister and to pronounce blessings in his name, as they still do today. Even up through the time of the father of John the Baptist, Zacharias, they were still at that temple, still offering sacrifice, still doing the incense, even though there was no ark behind those curtains. It was empty. That's why the Levites have no share or inheritance among their brothers. The Lord is their inheritance, as the Lord your God told them. Now I had stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights as I did the first time, and the Lord listened to me at this time also. It was not his will to destroy you. And so he didn't. Go, the Lord said to me, and lead the people on their way, so they may enter and possess the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Actually, one of the things that God is doing is keeping his word, is the reason why he did it. So now, at this point in history, what did God expect of them? And looking at what he expected from them, what does it say to us? Now, O Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? But to fear the Lord your God, and fear in this sense means stand in awe of him, to walk in all of his ways, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands and decrees that I am giving you today for your own good. Same story for you and me. We don't observe the Lord's commands for his good. We don't tithe because we're going to enrich God. We don't keep the Sabbath because he needs a day off. We do it for our own good. That's what every word that is written in the Bible is there for. It's for our own good. And so many times we think we know better. We think we can find a better way of doing it, better way of understanding, better way, new truth. I got news for you, folks. There is no such thing as new truth. Truth is truth. It always has been and always will be. To the Lord your God belong the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth, and everything in it. Yet the Lord set his affection on your forefathers and loved them and chose you, their descendants, above all the nations, as it is today. Circumcise your hearts, therefore, and do not be stiff-necked any longer. This isn't just a matter of the flesh. It's a matter of the heart. I think some people don't realize that circumcision of the heart is an Old Testament doctrine. I sometimes tell young men, if you ever find yourself in trouble needing help, don't go to someone you have helped. You'll be disappointed. Go to your father's best friend. Same thing for young women. Why would you do that? Well, here's the example. It was the love of God for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that allowed these people to come to him for help in time of trouble. Not for their own sakes, but because God loved their fathers. And so, if your dad had a friend that really loved him, and you got yourself in trouble, go to him, because he'll love you because of his love for your dad. The Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality and accepts no bribes. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the alien, giving him food and clothing. Well, I find it a little hard to adopt a hard line about aliens coming into this country as a result of what I read right here. God told Israel, you are to love those who are aliens because you yourselves were aliens in Egypt. Okay, how do we handle it? We create a situation where people can come to our country as aliens legally and work here, and can grow, and can contribute, and make themselves a part of our culture and of our country. But we've got that so screwed up, I don't think we even know how to do it anymore. Fear the Lord your God and serve him. Hold fast to him and take your oaths in his name. He is your praise. He is your God who performed for you those great and awesome wonders you saw with your own eyes. Your forefathers who went down into Egypt were 70 in all. And now the Lord your God has made you as numerous as the stars in the sky. Well, not quite. He's speaking metaphorically, because we now know there are more stars than we ever imagined. Take a quick break, warm up your coffee, and we'll go on with chapter 11. Love the Lord your God. Keep his requirements, his decrees, his laws, his commandments always. Remember today that your children were not the ones who saw and experienced the discipline of the Lord your God. They didn't witness his majesty, his mighty hand, his stretched out arm. The signs he performed, the things he did in the heart of Egypt, both the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and the whole country, they didn't see any of this. Why? Well, they weren't there. They were born in the wilderness. Your children were. Some of you were children and teens when these things took place, so some of you did see them. What he did to the Egyptian army, its horses and chariots, how he overwhelmed them with the waters of the Red Sea as they were pursuing you, and how the Lord brought lasting ruin on them. It was not your children who saw what he did for you in the desert until you arrived at this place. And what he did to Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab the Reubenite, when the earth opened its mouth right in the middle of all Israel and swallowed them up with their household, your children didn't see that. You saw it with your own eyes, the great things the Lord has done. It is your duty, what he's telling them is, it's your duty to tell your children about these things. And I think it's fascinating the amount of time he's giving to this. We're down into chapter 11, and we still haven't gotten to outlining what the laws are. It wasn't that they hadn't heard them before. This is all predicate to this. It's what is we going to do this for? How are we going to go about it? He's trying to impress upon their mind, this old man is, as he's talking to these people, and I have little doubt that he's raised his voice from time to time. You saw these things. Now tell your children so they understand them. And boy, they told them again and again and again. And you find it through the Psalms. You find it all over the place. You find it all the way down to the speeches of the apostles in the New Testament, that they had to be reminded of the whys and the wherefores of this period of time. Okay. Observe, therefore, all the commandments I'm giving you today, so that you may have the strength to go in and take over the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so you can live long in the land that the Lord swore to your forefathers to give them to their descendants, a land flowing with milk and honey. Did you ever think about this? Is that one of the purposes of the law of God is to make you stronger, and that the disobedience to God, the breaking of the law, slowly but surely weakens you? It's what happens. And it is where, I'm afraid, in many cases, we have ended up in our own lives. We have weakened ourselves, and our nation today, because we've indulged ourselves, has become weak. Our power, really, in many ways, has been broken. We'll come to some statements about this later in the book of Deuteronomy and the reasons why it is so. But for you and for your family, observe the commands God gave you that you can have the strength to go in and take over the land. And I think, why in the world do people want to throw out God's law? Let's take for it, just as an example, the food laws. Why do you think he gave them to these people? I see it really in what Jesus had to say about it, and I see it all around. Yeah, there were the purity. Yeah, there was the holiness, and yes, all that stuff. But why was all that stuff there? It was to make them stronger, and it actually physically made them stronger because the things they shouldn't eat were going to make them weaker and sick. So many of the laws, you'd be surprised, that we find in the Old Testament are for your health and your strength. You violate them, you could do it once, and you probably won't even notice the difference. The problem is, you won't do it just once. You'll do it again, and over time, it will cut the heart right out of you. The land you are entering to take over is not like the land of Egypt, from which you've come, where you planted your seed and then you had to irrigate it by foot, as in a vegetable garden. You had to work to get your garden irrigated. But the land you are crossing the Jordan to take possession of is a land of mountains and valleys that drinks rain from heaven. I think about this every time it rains down here in East Texas. I walk out and look at my front yard while the rain's falling on it, and I think, oh, what an incredible sprinkler system God has. I had to spend a lot of money for mine. It doesn't even do a very good job. There are gaps in it here and there, and it's expensive to run with all that water going out there. And if we have a good year, I just go out and I watch God water my yard. It's huge. It is a land the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are continually on it from the beginning of the year to its end. So, if you faithfully obey all the commands I'm giving you today, to love the Lord your God, to serve him with all your heart and all your soul, I will send rain on your land in its season, both autumn and spring rains, so you can gather in your grain, new wine, and oil. And guess what he's telling them there? This is the source of your wealth. It was agriculture. It was all agriculture at the time. He said, I'm going to cause your water to fall on your land in season. You'll get it when you want it, and you won't get it when you don't want it. What do you have to do? Obey God, keep his laws, carry through with them. I'll provide grass in the fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Now be careful, or you'll be enticed to turn away and worship other gods and bow down to them. Then the Lord's anger will burn against you. He will shut the heavens so it will not rain on the ground, and the ground will produce no produce, and you will soon perish from the good land God has given you. Does this mean that drought is chastisement from God? Well, I think we would be wise to take it as such. I would think we would be very wise to look at it and say, well, this is the hand of God. I am being chastised. You know, if you think about it, folks, at what point in your life did you ever not deserve spanking? I remember once my mother was getting the belt out to give me a going over because of something I had done, and I complained. I said, I didn't do it. She said, well, if you didn't, just consider this spanking as for the times when you did do it and I didn't know about it. That shut me up because I knew all too well that I had had plenty of opportunities where I deserved it and managed to dodge it, and so I took my punishment like the little man that I was. And I honestly think that any time we face adversity, it's a smart thing for us to stop and reflect and look at ourselves, consider our lives, and realize that God's chastisement is to make us stop and think, make us change our ways, make us begin to put things right. And maybe it was just time and chance that brought it on us, but God can stop time and chance, and he didn't. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds, he said. Tie them like symbols on your hands. Bind them on your foreheads. I don't think he's talking about like the Jews do with their little boxes and stuff. I think symbolically he is just basically saying this has got to be in your hand and your forehead. That's a symbol of what you do and how you think. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you're walking along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land the Lord God swore to give to your forefathers, as many as the days that are the heavens above the earth. Now, who is this for? For God? No. It's for your kids. And candidly, too little thought is being given to future generations nowadays and the burdens that are going to be on their shoulders because of our stupidity and the way that we have gone about things and the self-indulgence and the fact that we will not engage in a little self-denial so that our children will have a better life. That's what God wants. And that's what you have to do. You have to explain. Well, now, talk about them going down the roadside. Well, one day, my wife and I were out walking in our neighborhood, and a young bird dog joined us on our walk. You know how dogs are. They're gregarious. They like to be with you. And so as we walked along, she would go off and hunt a little over here, and then she'd run off the other side and smell stuff over there, and she went all the way home with us. So I took her in my backyard. She came with me. She went up on my deck. I sat down in a chair, and she almost jumped in my lap. She was so enthusiastic about having found somebody who would pay attention to her. We gave her water, gave her a little something to eat, and then began to try to find the owner. Why did we do that? Candidly, I didn't even think about it at the time. But did you know the law of God says that if you find your neighbor's animal, ox, ass, what have you, out in the way somewhere, you are not allowed by God's law to pretend you didn't see it. You shall surely gather that animal up, you take him and feed him, take care of it, and look for your neighbor and try to return that animal where it belongs. It's your obligation as a neighbor. It's an obligation placed upon you by God, and it even applies to your neighbor's bird dog. Okay, if you carefully observe all these commands I'm giving you to follow, to love the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to hold fast to him, the Lord will drive out all these nations before you, and you will dispossess nations larger and stronger than you. Every place you set your foot will be yours. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, from the Euphrates River to the western sea. No man will be able to stand against you. The Lord your God, as he promised you, will put the terror and fear of you on the whole land wherever you go. And, in a small way, it's still being fulfilled in the land of Israel today. And God says, one of the prophets says, everybody who burdens themselves with Jerusalem, it's going to be like a stone, and it will crush them. See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commands of the Lord your God that I'm giving you today. The curse if you disobey the commands of the Lord your God and turn away from the way I command you by following other gods which you have not known. How hard is this? I mean, is this really that hard to understand? That every bit of the law, from the beginning to the end of it, is not for God, it's for our good. When the Lord your God has brought you into the land you are entering to possess, you are to proclaim on Mount Gerizim the blessings and on Mount Ebal the curses. They lined themselves up on these two opposing mountains. It's kind of an interesting place to go to and realize where they were and what they did. And they shouted the blessings and curses back across there. As you know, these mountains are across Jordan, west of the road toward the setting of the sun, near the great trees of Moreh in the territory of those Canaanites living in the Arabah in the vicinity of Gilgal. You are to cross Jordan to enter in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you. When you have taken it over and are living there, be sure that you obey all the decrees and laws I am setting before you today. You know, I think we know it took faith to believe this and to practice it, just as it takes faith for you to believe it and to practice it. And you know where the faith really comes down? It's when you have obeyed God and you think you've done the right things and it doesn't seem to be working. But you see, you still have one more thing. After you've done all these things, you have one more thing you have to do. You have to keep on doing them. You have to exercise faith and trust God for the long haul. Well, that's it for this time. Let's get together next week, shall we? Be sure and write to me, ron@borntowin.net, and we will talk again.